Chapter 65, The Three Worlds of Business. Number 3, The World of the Executive Office.
Earthquakes happen when seismic waves travel outward from an epicenter to literally shake the world. Likewise, business quakes begin in the office of a CEO and spread from department to department, shaking both paradigm and tradition until the size and shape of the company finally fits the vision of the CEO. Some business quakes are the genesis of a brilliant future, others result in bankruptcy. But at the epicenter of every one of them is the chair of a chief executive officer. The quality of the decisions made in that chair is ultimately revealed in the long-term profitability of the company. To understand a CEO's vision, you need only visit the company. Whom to hire, how much to pay, where to be located, hours of operation, product pricing, merchandising, staff training, and motivation are all the result of business quakes in the mind of the CEO. From there, the ever-spreading ripples create the world of the customer's experience, then spread outward until they are revealed in the company's advertising, forever telling the story that is uniquely and wonderfully their own.
Chapter 66, Banker Talk.
The communication gap that exists between bankers and business owners, says Tom Bailey, president of Brentwood Bank in Pittsburgh, is due to the fact that bankers see everything from exactly a reverse perspective. When a bank president talks about his bank's assets and liabilities, you probably assume the bank's assets to be money, right? Well, in banking, the money our depositors give us is actually considered to be a liability. When you deposit money into my bank and I give you a deposit receipt, that's like an IOU. Anytime you ask for your money, I've got to be ready to pay it back with interest. In banking, it's actually the loans that are considered to be a bank's assets, not its deposits. This is just one example of how bankers tend to see things backwards from business owners. The secret of borrowing money is understanding how bankers view the world. When you've learned to answer all your banker's questions in accounting terms, the banker's native tongue, you're a lot more likely to get the loan you'll need to survive the rapid growth that occurs when your company experiences breakthrough. Bankers tend to have great confidence in the business owner who keeps at least one finger on the financial ratios of the business and can intelligently discuss how the business is performing in each of 6 critical areas. But not even bankers look at ratios in absolute terms. Ratios in absolute terms aren't nearly as meaningful as they are in relative terms, says Frost Bank Vice President Clay Carey. How your company compares with others in your industry is important, but probably the best use of ratios as a tool is for comparison of your company from one period to the next. The changes in your ratios and the reasons for those changes are what really interest a banker. These are the 6 basic mathematical relationships you need to understand to be able to speak to bankers in their native tongue. Number 1, current ratio. Measures the liquid assets available to meet all debts falling due within 365 days. The higher the current ratio, the greater the ability of your firm to pay its bills. Example: if you have a current ratio of 1.5, this means a year's debts could be paid 1.5 times by current assets. Number 2, quick ratio is like the current ratio, except that inventories are deducted from assets prior to being divided by liabilities. Current assets minus inventories divided by current liabilities equals quick ratio. Since inventory is probably less liquid than other current assets, the quick ratio provides a more accurate picture of your firm's ability to meet its short-term debts. Number 3, average collection period ratio is an indicator of how long your company must wait on its receivables. Accounts and notes receivable times days in the year divided by annual credit sales equals days of the average collection period. Example: if the ratio comes out to 54 days and your credit policy offers 30-day terms, this means you're collecting your typical receivable 24 days after the due date. Now this stuff matters. If your average collection period time is getting longer, your customers may be paying more slowly because they're having financial problems, or you may not stay on top of your collection process. Collecting your average receivable a few days earlier can really have a positive impact on your business's cash position or reduce the amount you have to borrow. And conversely, a slowdown can hurt a lot. Here, time really is money. Number 4, inventory turnover ratio indicates the efficiency of your company's inventory management. Interpreting this ratio can be tricky, since a high ratio may be caused by extremely good inventory management or by levels of inventory that are far too low, meaning that you're too often out of stock on fast-moving items. A low ratio indicates that you've bought too many items that are slow to sell. Beginning inventory plus ending inventory divided by 2 equals average inventory. Cost of goods sold divided by average inventory equals inventory turnover ratio. Now, if the turnover ratio turns out to be 2, this means your company sells its total stock of goods twice in one period. Compare with industry averages to see whether your ratio is in line. Specific industry averages for inventory turnover and most of these other ratios are published regularly by Dun & Bradstreet. You should know what yours are. Number 5. Turnover of working capital ratio measures how actively your working capital is functioning in terms of sales. Working capital is all assets that can be converted into operating funds within a year. Current assets minus current liabilities equals working capital. Net assets divided by working capital equals turnover of working capital. A low ratio means that working capital is not being used efficiently. A high ratio suggests a possible vulnerability to creditors. Again, check the Dun & Bradstreet averages for your specific industry to see what your target ratio should be. Number 6. Debt-to-equity ratio is an indicator of the investment of the lender and other creditors relative to the investment of the owners. Debt divided by equity equals debt-to-equity ratio. A high ratio indicates that the business is financed mostly through borrowed funds. A low ratio indicates that the owners have invested heavily in the business. Although different types of businesses do have different standards for debt to equity, generally speaking, a high ratio relative to your peers means you will be seen as a higher risk to a banker. The debt-to-equity ratio is used by lenders as an indicator of your company's ability to weather a storm. Generally, a company with very little relative equity will have a harder time surviving a downturn than will a company with greater equity. Also, all borrowing comes at a cost, so a company that has more debt generally has to pay more interest and is therefore less profitable than its competitors, all other things being equal. Additionally, if your debt level is already high, you will be less likely to borrow additional money to take advantage of new opportunities. Debt to equity is a ratio that bankers look at closely. Clay Carey adds, "One thing small businesses neglect is the quality of their financial statements. Most business owners operate their companies based on a few key indicators that are important to them, maybe daily sales or gross margins or receivables collections or cash position, and they don't pay too much attention to the financial statement as a whole, particularly the balance sheet. You don't have to pay an expensive CPA firm to do an audit, but your financial statement should be prepared by someone who fully understands accounting. If your banker doesn't feel he can rely on the accuracy of the information you're providing, it's difficult to loan money, regardless of how comfortable he is with the other loan decision factors. If the financial statement doesn't add up or isn't prepared on a basis that is consistent with basic accounting or tax standards, or if you don't understand your own company's information, you'll immediately lose credibility in the eyes of your banker."
Capitalism is the worst economic system ever invented, except for all the others. Something Winston Churchill didn't quite say, but he would have if he had thought of it before the wizard.
Chapter 67. Have you fixed the leak in your boat?
Regardless of what they might tell you, only 3 in 10 shoppers are just looking. Statistically, 7 of them are hoping to buy today, and they contacted you because they're hoping to buy from you. It's that simple. These same statistics tell us that the average salesperson will close only 22% of his selling opportunities. This means that given 10 selling opportunities, the average salesperson will close only 2 people. Yet 7 of the 10 were hoping to buy today. To increase your sales volume by 50%, All you need to do is transfer confidence to just one of the 5 disappointed customers who were hoping to buy. If your sales team can transfer confidence to 2 of the 5 hopeful but unsold people, your sales volume will double with 0 increase in selling opportunities. All you need to do is sell 4 out of 10. Your sales team doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be better than average. Nobody gets rich selling 2 out of 10. If you're looking for a quick payoff, don't gamble your hard-earned money on short-term advertising. The odds simply aren't in your favor. Invest those dollars in sales training instead. Then, when you've fixed the leak in your boat, you can rev up the motor of advertising and it will take you anywhere you want to go. So what'll it be? Are you going to look for a more powerful engine? Or are you going to fix the leak in the boat?
Chapter 68. Not So Stupid.
I liked your memo about the fallacies of deep discounting,
said Joe.
but the magic words of retail aren't profit margin. The magic words of retail are inventory turn. It isn't so critical how much you make on an item. What's critical is how often you make it.
One of my best friends, Joe Romano, is the CEO of Skull & Company, a retail consulting firm that has been guiding business owners to financial greatness since 1922. Joe is easily one of the top 10 authorities in America on the subject of business finance, and he was on the phone to explain to me more fully the mysteries of profit margin and inventory turn. I was all ears.
Take Sam's Club as an example,
said Joe.
While the average retailer sells his inventory only once each year, Sam's Club sells the entire inventory in each of their warehouses 12 times a year. Not a bad trick, considering they've been building new warehouses every 11 days since 1983.
I was incredulous. Joe, are you telling me that Sam's makes so much money that they can buy several acres of prime real estate and build a gigantic warehouse and fill it with millions of dollars worth of inventory every 11 days?
Yes, they're making that kind of money, but it's due to the magic of inventory turn. Sam's adds only a 15% markup on each item in the store, but they'll sell and reorder that item 12 times a year. This means that during the same year it takes the average retailer to make a $1 markup on his investment of $1. Sam's Club invests that same dollar and makes a markup of 15 cents 12 times. That's $1.80 annual return on a $1 investment, nearly double the return on investment experienced by the average retailer in America.
So I guess you're saying that low markup strategies can work after all.
You haven't heard the best part,
said Joe.
Since they've got great credit, Sam's Club can get payment terms of 90 days from each of their suppliers. This means that Sam's will sell an item 3 times at a 15% markup each time before they have to pay for the item even once. Sam's will have deposited $3.45 in the bank before they're obligated to pay the first dollar. Considering that they're selling a multi-million-dollar inventory 3 times before they have to pay for it even once, does it still surprise you that they have the money to build a new store every 11 days?
There was a long silence on the phone while I digested what Joe had told me. After a minute or so, Joe snapped me back into conversation with a question.
What are the magic words of retail?
The magic words are inventory turn, Joe. Just before he had to go, my friend said,
There may still be hope for you as a consultant after all, Roy.
Thanks, Joe. I'm keeping my fingers crossed.